Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. This is Friday at 8:40 p.m. Gold Coast time, just because we're going to be talking about Liège Bastogne Liège, previewing the men and women's race, and the start list may change. And who knows, if you do a preview, things like that change now. With COVID, Pogacar and UAE getting booted out a couple of hours before Flesh, but we just got to roll with it. Men's first, then the women's recap. There'll be two separate YouTube videos. We've even got footage of the men and women's races on the podcast YouTube channel now from the Ardennes races we've had up to date this year. But before we get to the men's preview, our show partner, Le Col, they have Drops Le Col. They're named partners or sponsors of Drops Le Col, British Continental team. They raced in Flesh, and they're lining up for Liège Bastogne Liège this weekend. They're underdogs for sure against a tough Trek Segafredo SD Works squad, etc. But we're hoping for a top 10 result, and I think they might do it. Flesh is hard because it's a pure watts per kilo test, but hoping Drops Le Col can get a top 10 this weekend. But if you're watching the women's race, make sure you barrack for them. But men's race now, we'll go through the betting odds because that's the way I think about these things. The favourite for Liège Bastogne Liège is Primoz Roglic at about $5.50. Tadej Pogacar second in the betting, about $6, $6.50, and then Alaphilippe a little bit longer. I'd say on Betfair about 7s to 8s. Then Valverde over 10s. Pidcock, you can get him for 12s and above. Bit surprised by that. 6th is Woods, then Schachman, Yates, Carapaz, Adam Yates, that is. I don't really understand Adam Yates being in the top 10 favourites at like 20 to 1, but what's your gut reaction to those odds for Liège, Benji, for the favourites?
I think that Roglic being first is normal. Alaphilippe and Pogacar being close to that relatively as well. We know from last year that those were contenders in the last kilometer. Hirschi not being up there is something that, is kind of, it's kind of due to this season, because at the end of last season, everybody would have said that in this Ardennes he would have been demolishing everything. I said it at the start of the season, and you were nice to put up the statement, the controversial statement at the start of the season that he would not get a good season this year. And so far, it's majorly leaning towards what you said. And he hasn't been at his game. He has been nowhere near his game so far. We haven't seen him at Flesh, but at Amstel we saw him basically getting demolished on the last Cowbeddick. So that's not ideal. Definitely if you want to try and win these Ardennes Classics with this as one of your main goals of the season, if not your main goal, if you are Hirschi with that type of your rider type. But 41 odds is what I see here for him, which is crazy. But it's crazy,
for the guy who probably would have won last year.
Yeah,
like without Alaphlippe's deviation, him or Pogacar, but probably Hirschi winning Liège after winning Flesh. And who knows what's happened with him. I guess he's had an interrupted schedule with, was it getting his wisdom teeth out, and then it was his hip was sore, and then this and that. Who knows? But not looking great. The profile, if you're not familiar with it, it is the same as last year. 259 grueling kilometers, I think 4,400 meters, 4,350 meters climbing during the day. And there's a lot of the climbs come thick and fast in the last 60 to 70 Ks of Liège Bastogne Liège. The climbs you'll be familiar with, Stocku, Rosière, then getting into the last 30 kilometers, the big ones, Côte de la Redoute, that's with 35 kilometers to go, 2Ks at 8.5%. And then where Alaphilippe attacked last year on Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon, 1.3Ks at 10.5%. This is probably one of the steepest sustained pinches in Liège, and it comes with 13 Ks to go, short descent, and then they do the Boncel climb, 1.2 Ks at 6.3%, and then that descent you should be familiar with, the Jakob Fuglsang one, where his back wheel went and nearly crashed in the 2019 edition, I think it was. He is the same descent, and then a flat run into the finish, and turn right on the river, and then sprint, where the group last year was Alaphilippe attacking on that climb, followed by Pogacar, Hirschi, Roglic, all went to the finish. Mohoric caught them. They were kind of sitting up, and then Mohoric led them out. Alaphilippe deviated. Roglic won. You remember it well. Iconic moment. But apparently headwind on the finish on Sunday, Benji. I'm not sure. I think it's going to play out the same as last year. I think the level is so similar between Pogacar, Pidcock, Alaphilippe, Roglic, particularly on a climb that's not the Mur. It's not as steep. Alaphilippe's, he was the initiator last year. He was the initiator in Imola. He's not had that supreme kick. I know he just won Flash record time, but Amstel wasn't as good. How do you see Sunday playing out? Same as last year. Attack by one of the favourites on that climb. They work together till the finish. Sprint, or you think Pogacar's got something in mind, or you think Quickstep might do something different?
I think we have to look at Lanterne Rouge as the first position to start attacking. That's with roughly 40k to go, because I think we've got lots of punchers here that could wait for the last hill. You mentioned all their names so far, but we also have quite a bunch of riders that cannot wait until the last hill, and they're also in teams with riders that can wait. So those could be sent out as riders that go early. The first name that came to mind for me was Almeida at the Koenig Quickstep, and he's not the only one in that team, but Zevenand is in there as well, and those are the names that you don't see waiting for that last hill. You want to see them just put up the attacks throughout the parkour itself, and Lanterne Rouge seems to be the perfect candidate to do something like that. For Roglic, he'd have riders like Vingegaard trying to control that, I'd expect. And the real question is, who are the riders that want to keep the race closed, and who are the ones that want to make it extra magical by having their team go early? I think that the Koenig will try and put Alaphilippe in a seat on that, elite group, and they're going to try and attack with riders. I'm not sure which one, but Van Zevenand, Almeida, those type of riders to relieve the pressure from Alaphilippe sitting in that group, while he still has the likes of Dries Devenijns around. I think you mentioned it before we started recording, that Devenijns would be perfect to keep Alaphilippe protected while the others go off on an adventure at the front of the peloton. But the question there is, what would UAE do about it? And that's where I'm really unsure, because last year you would have said that Hirschi would be the person you would wait for on the last hill, with Pogacar trying to go early and doing early stuff. But this year, I have more trust in Pogacar because of the history of Hirschi so far this year. So I'm not sure what they can do.
100%.
I think that they have to pull it all out for Pogacar almost. And if that is the case, then Hirschi is the guy that needs to go early, which is just weird and a bit surprising, I'd say.
Well, that's the weird thing, is that he probably doesn't have the fitness to attack from 40Ks and stay away. Other riders that I think might be joining early quick-step attacks are Fabro and Conrad. Maybe he's okay at flesh, but Schelling as well on board, Hans Grohe. For sure, be expecting attacks from him. Maybe Freile for Astana. And honestly, I think Ineos, if they see those sort of moves going up the road, send Carapaz with it, and then you don't have to chase and put the pressure, or send Moscon. Like, Moscon's in magic form, just won 2 stages at Tour of the Alps. He's in races this long. He is so good. Maybe not this hilly. No, that's not true. I think he won. What's that race where he got let out by Eddie Dunbar, Italian Giro della Toscana, where he won that. Yep. I think Ineos should try and copy Quick-Step strategy that Benji just mentioned and use Moscon as a weapon. And I like him as an outsider to win this race, actually. But let's go through some of the contenders on the various teams. Probably be a little bit more prompt with it this time. We mentioned it, Alaphilippe on Quick-Step, Wellens on Lotto Soudal. We are counting out Gilbert. Guillaume Martin on Cofidis. I'd like to see Remy Rochas in the break, actually. Just see how he goes. Mollema for Trek Segafredo. Roglic, the leader at Jumbo-Visma, with Vingegaard, Hairsink Omen helping him. Matthews for Bike Exchange, but they got Chavez as well. ISU all out for Woods. They got Martin, Impey, and Nealons. That's actually a low-key good squad. Like for Mike Woods, it's pretty good. UAE, Pogacar, Bahrain victorious, Haig and Poles and Mohoric. So they got strength in depth. Dylan Turns, they should also be attacking early, getting Padun in an early break. Fulsang and Aaron Baru at Astana. And that's where I'll stop, Benji. Aaron Baru's my second guy I really like as a long shot. You know, he came 13th at Flesh. Aaron Baru? Did you know he could climb like that?
Well, he's a god, so he can do everything. The thing with this is that he could play it out the same way that Mohoric did last year, and he could drop on the last hill on Rochefoucauld if the real punches go, but he has the descending capabilities of crawling back in at descent afterwards and smashing it towards the group that is ahead, and that is the quality I see in Aramburu. The question is, does he have enough sprint to beat the likes of a Pogacar or Roglic head-to-head? And that's where it's like, it's going to be close. I don't know. I don't remember that well. I know that he has a sprint or a punch at least, but we've seen that from Pogacar as well. We've seen that from a Roglic as well. We've seen that from an Alaphilippe certainly as well. So it's a bit of a question of whether he can beat them 1v1 in sprints, but if they have like 20 seconds on the last descent, he can crawl that back before they get to the sprint, I hope and I think. But he's definitely one of the more dark horses because he's nowhere near the favoritism here. But there's like plenty of riders that are
70
dark
to 1
horses.
Plus.
Yeah, and another name that is very far from the favorites, but has a history with this race, as in he was looking extremely good last year, but then had a mechanical before the last hill, and that's Benoit Cosnefroid. The man is on crazy odds for winning this race. I am not sure he can win the race, but I certainly think that he can top 10 this time around, and if not, top 5. He didn't seem perfect at Flèche Wallonne, let's be honest about that. His team was setting it up perfectly for him to be at the front on the eventual Mur de Huy, but he couldn't make it. But I really believe in Benoit Cosnefroid. He hasn't had the best season so far, but he looked great in Brabant-Sepel when he tried to close that down in the last kilometer and a half towards the three that were away, Van Aert and so forth. But I believe in Cosnefroid. I don't know what you think about Cosnefroid.
How does he win?
Yeah, that's the issue as well for me.
It's okay. I think there's a scenario. Say it's headwind. Say Jumbo-Visma are having to spend a lot of day chasing, and then they can't set Roglic up, or he's not able to attack on the last climb. Remember, he does attack, but he gets, it's a 10-kilometer descent to the finish. Teams can get organised, or riders can get organised behind, like Mohoric last year, so they don't even get as big a gap because Alaphilippe's not as nuclear as last year. Then you got that headwind and it becomes back to a larger group in a reduced bunch sprint finish. And then you got riders like Aaron Baru who just need to get into that group, just like an MSR and Poggio, just like, not like his Basque Country win, but great descender. He's got to get into that group. And then at least he has a sprint. The problem with Cosnefroid is, maybe I'm underrating it, but I know he got beaten by Casper Pedersen in Paris Tour last year in a 2-up sprint. He's not good enough to drop them on the last climb, and he's not good enough to win the sprint. It's like what Benji said. Matthews for Bike Exchange, Benji. Do you think he was good at Amstel, Kalberg? He got into the lead group, then he couldn't react to the Pidcock attack afterwards. I don't know his history in this race, but I would assume it's still too difficult for him, surely.
I don't know. Like, every year we see some climbing capability by Matthews at a certain point in the season where we're like, mate, he can win Amstel with this. And, he can also win LBL with this type of climbing. We saw it last year in Tirreno. We saw it this year in, I think, Paris-Nice, where he was going for an intermediate sprint in the middle of the climb. But all in all, he has the capability of climbing very well. The problem is that he doesn't have the acceleration to follow the likes of Alaphilippe going on the Rochefoucauld. So he ends up in the second group then. And then he's fully dependent on that group. And he does not have the teammates, I think, to be in that group and help him out. Robert Stannard is looking good, but he's always on the edge of getting into that second group, I'd say. It's going to be really hard for Matthews, I think.
Yeah. He came fourth in 2017 on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas profile when the Côte de la Rochefoucauld crested 20 kilometers from the finish. So I think that profile might have suited him a little bit more than this one here, where all the pure punchers go nuclear on that last climb and try and get away. The man who we haven't spoken about, and this is what's insane, he's like third or fourth in the betting at 41 years old, Valverde, third at Flesh. Crazy to be still up there in the top 5 contenders for Liège Bastogne Liège. He's supported by Jorgensen, Verona, Serrano, Mas Arcas. I think Benji, he's a really good shout to win, because I don't know if he's that far behind Roglic and Pogacar on that climb, or Alaphilippe. I know he got dropped by Alaphilippe on the Mur, but that's a full-out effort on a 20% pinch. Draft is not as important. Do you think his sprint is good enough, though, Benji, to beat Roglic and Alaphilippe?
I think I might jinx myself here, but I don't believe in Valverde for LBL. His sprint is not good enough to beat the others in a head-on sprint, in my opinion. He always has the problem that he ends up in the second group after attacks, and he's always pretty bad at causing cooperation in the chasing group. So that reduces his chances of winning from that chasing group, because he reduces the chances of the chasing group coming back. And after the Rochefoucauld, you don't have too much choice. You need to work together, or you can't make it back. And him following the others on Rochefoucauld, I see it happening. It's possible, but I don't see him winning. It's like, I don't see an opportunity like that happening. He needs to find a way to ride away solo, because he can't do it in a sprint, in my opinion. Definitely not in recent years. I don't think it's going to happen, personally. I think that the sprint is an issue for if he gets in that group, and outside of that, I also don't see him dropping anyone like that. He'd need to have a situation where he's in the descent of that last hill in a group of 5, and they're all watching each other. Who's going to pace, even though it's a descent, so that's unlikely to happen, that situation. And then he's going to Soler away like in the Vuelta last year. That's the only situation in which I see Valverde winning this race.
All right, now on to our picks for Liège Bastogne Liège. I'm picking Alejandro Valverde to win. After what Benji said, I think his sprint is just fine, and it looked really good at Amstel. He let it out from 300 meters. He's just got to be in the right position, and I think it's more than good enough. He's won world champs in 2018. That was super long. He looks to be almost at that level again after last year being an off year because he didn't feel like training inside. So he's my pick to win. With, I guess, my heart, my head says Pogacar, to be honest. But my long shots are Moscon, Arambaru, because Moscon from far in a disjointed race, and Arambaru from a slow big group, if it all comes down to it. I honestly, head-to-head, in terms of value, like Pidcock way, way more than Roglic. And that's just because I see it as a reduced group together, and maybe they're 50-50 sprint-wise, but that's not what the odds are saying. So, Pidcock sprinted Kerner, Brabantse-Pijl, and Amstel. He's quick. So, the length of the race is an issue, but I don't see that as being a big problem. Who are your picks and long shots, Benji?
Good question. Before I go into them, I do want to mention that there's other people that we didn't go in depth about that do certainly have a chance of winning this race. For example, David Gaudu has been pretty great so far this season, seems to be on the provisional start list of Groupama for this race. And if that's the case, then I do see him having a capability of being in the top 10 eventually, and he's got a bit of a punch as well, so he could follow attacks, but I don't see him following the pace of an Alaphilippe launching away. Schachmann as well, we spoke about him very shortly, but I think that Schachmann is the kind of rider that will likely podium LBL. That's a pick of mine. He's going to podium LBL. I don't know what spot, but I believe in a podium for him. When it comes to my dark horse, it's going to be Aramburu. I'd say it's more than a bit of a dark horse, although it's risky. It's the same way that Mohoric could win this race in the same strategy. And they don't, on paper, have enough sprint to beat the likes of a Roglic if they catch back to that group, I think. So that's going to be their issue at hand, I think. Although I sincerely hope that Aramburu wins. Let me be very clear of that. Yeah. Who is going to win this race? You know what? I'm going to go for something completely biased, and I'm going to say a Belgian name, Mauri van Zevenand, for the hype. And he's going to do something, and he's going to win the race. Another dark horse for me is Almeida.
He's definitely going to do something.
Yeah.
We will see him at some point in the race attacking. That's a lock. But if you're watching on YouTube, let us know your picks in advance. Are we counting anyone out? For Mike Woods, the problem is he's not good enough to drop them all on the climbs, I don't think. He's not good enough to win a sprint either, and the descent's a problem for him too. I think one of the strongest teams is Bahrain, so really interested to see how they play it. Like Dylan Teuns was so good at Tour of Flanders. I'd really like to see how they play at Bahrain victorious as well.
Question.
Anyone else we missed?
I've got a final question.
Your final
we know
question.
that Trek Segafredo has Bauke Mollema here. We know that Mollema has shown to win San Sebastian Lombardy in pretty similar ways, as in attacking very late from a group. Would you see that as a capability here, or do you don't believe in him getting away in a group like Alaphilippe and so forth? I think that's the weakness here, the vulnerability.
Well, no, he can't win in that conventional fashion, obviously, if there's a group of favourites going up the road. The way he wins is by attacking that group early. They look at each other. He powers away at his own pace. There's no cohesion, and that's the way he won, what was it, La Guelia earlier this year, or GP Industria? It was La Guelia. I know it's a different level race, but that's how he can win. He's in a head-to-head sprint up Redoute or whatever. No, he's not quicker than Roglic or Alaphilippe, but they might not chase him down. And that's where I think hopefully Quick-Step and Ineos try and make this race hard, because the Ineos team is stacked. So there's no point having all those riders there just to have Pidcock follow an Alaphilippe attack late. But anyway, that was our Liège men's preview. Keeping it short and sweet. It's one of my favourite races to watch.
Really?
I hate Flesh. I like Liège. I really like. It's like the Climby Boy version of MSR, because
the Climby Boy version of MSR. Is that how you're gonna call LBL?
Profile. Well, it's the current profile where they got the descent, and are they going to get caught? Are they going to cooperate? I really like it. That last 15 to 20 Ks of Liège. I'll have highlights of the men and women's, so make sure you check that out on my channel as well.